Thank you very much for joining the 35th Tokyo International Film Festival Animation Tokyo. Thank you for joining us today. The TIFF Japanese Animation Programming Advisor. My name is Ryota Fujitsu, and I am the critic for animation. Today we're going to talk about animation and Tokyo, and we're going to have a free discussion with the experts. We would like to invite the guests, Mr. Tomohiko Ito from Animation Director, and also Mr. Toshiya Ueno from Wako University Human Department, Human Science Division. Please. I would like you to introduce yourself shortly. Please take a seat. I'm the animation director, Ito Tomohiko. Nice to meet you. Now, I've been enjoying animation 40 years. I'm not quite sure what I can talk about, but my name is Ueno Toshiya from Wako University. Nice to meet you both. Today, we're going to talk about animation in Tokyo. And first of all, I would like to explain why I set this theme simply. I would like to share a PowerPoint with you. Now, when we think about Tokyo in animation, the TV animation started at the Tetsuwan Atomu, and Atomu is the future film, and so even if it's a Tokyo, we don't really have the picture of Tokyo, but it is the scenery of Tokyo. At the Seitman, we have 8-man and also the Tetsujin 28-go. And at that time, there was this entertainment through comics. And if you think about the scenery, the story was mainly focusing on Tokyo. Now, Mamoru Oshii also mentioned that even if the city comes over, it is mainly Tokyo. That was the precondition at that time. And especially, you don't really write an icon, but you can see the buildings, and that would be shown as Tokyo at that point. Now, as an icon of Tokyo, after this time, Tokyo Tower and also the main subway was given and shown. Now, in the 1970s, you can see the Tokyo Tower and also the main subway of Tokyo, and that changes in 1980. And the West Shinjuku high-rises come out. That was completed in 1965. And at that time, when it happens, then the Tokyo icon became these kind of buildings. At that time, the animation sceneries started to change, and it was not just the background, but you was looking at the space, and it was more close to reality, and it changed in that way. Now, if you look at the Symposium, the Rupan 3 and Saraba Itoshiki Rupan, in there was 1981. It came out, the robot, which is going to commit a crime, started to fly. And in Genma Taisen in 1983, then you can see that the West Shinjuku building was going to start. And also Mega Zone 23 was launched in 1985, spotting different areas of Tokyo. Now, if we think about what the icon is in Tokyo, now it is the scramble crossing of Shibuya that often appears in animations, and also it comes in 3D CGs. And actually, you can see that the models are already sold in the movie sectors. And also, in 10 years ago, when we had the IT bubbles, the Roppongi Hills was also focused too. In 2020, the national stadium also came in focus. And so the new national, similar to the national athletic scenery was also shown. So it was kind of showing the latest Tokyo, and it has been changing in that way. Now, when we think about Tokyo, what is this going to show? Now, if we look at Respect of Tokyo, we have chosen 4. Now, Harumagedon is the one, and when he walks around, you can see that there are porno movies and also pachinko areas. There are these sceneries that are going to be focused on in the city, and it is shown in that way. And also Megazone 2-3 and Pet Labor 2. This shows about the latest the Japan after the World War II, recovering from the atomic bomb and the war. And also, if you look at the new young areas, that is the trend focus and the sword online audio scale, you can see that the youths are walking around in that area. Therefore, you can see that Tokyo has been the focus and changed in this way. Now, from now on, I would like to compare with different genres. Now, if we have to think about what happens in tokusatsu and also what happens in live actions and also what happens in live dramas too. Now, this is not going to be the main topic, but if we think about this in this way, we can see the characteristic of animations in Tokyo in animations. And so I simply kind of talk about the animation and Tokyo background of why I chose this topic. Now, first of all, I would like to ask you 2 questions. Now, when you say animation and Tokyo, what kind of things comes up to your mind? I would like to ask you, Mr. Ito, first. Well, thank you. Well, I'm 44 years old right now. Now, if you look at my generation, before the 2000, the animations were what captured me. And even if the Rintaro, it is before we have the image of X. And so I felt that Tokyo is a city that can be destroyed. That's the impression I have. And the Grand had the Ordinal, and many talented people started to combat each other in Tokyo. That's the story. Now, what was impressive and what kind of scene and what kind of stages or areas was impressive for you? Well, in Tokyo, there is this iconic buildings, and that was what I felt. The Tokyo Station and also Tokyo Tower, those would be the symbolic ones. But you can see that there's a lot of buildings around Yamanote Line. And I think you wouldn't have this kind of city around Japan, even if you look farther. But there's there's 7 things that you can destroy. Now, you can focus on that way. That was really a huge merit for the animation. That's what I thought. What about you, Mr. Ueno, when we think about animation in Tokyo? Well, I'm 60 years old right now, and I do remember my young days. And Akira. And when we had the Olympic in 2022, now you can see this kind of idea and also the perspectives for that. Now, the destroy is a key word. Was a key word. You can destroy Tokyo. If that means that Tokyo has been destroyed and it has been repetitively scrapped and built. And in that sense, I do like part 2, but I think you have to think about the young and also the men, youth, and they run on the motorbicycle. Akira is the impressive character for me. Well, Akira, in the beginning, it shows that Tokyo is destroyed, and then Neo Tokyo comes to this highlight, and that is also destroyed. And you can see that the destruction is repeatedly done. But if you look at the Conte for animation, the Akira, the area that was bombed was the Akira studio, and it is a set that it is Mitaka, and also the date that was bombed. I think that was the date of being destroyed was when the film was published, and so there is this humor coming in the destruction, and I thought that was also interesting too. And so Akira is the one that you were impressed with, right? Yes. Okay, then I would like to ask Mr. Ito next. Now, when we think about ordinary scale, now the Sword Out Online is a soul dive VR game, and it's the story that you're not able to come back. Now, at that time, when you think about the new era, and they were focusing on that as the new theme. Now, the theater becomes an AR, it becomes an augmented reality. Now, in that sense, how do you think it has, how did it change? Well, actually, the original writer said he wanted to go for the AR, and that is why. Well, we thought we were worried if it's not going to be drawn or back, but he said he wanted to go. So we wanted to show that it is impressive and progressing, and so we had to think about how we can show that on movie, and that was the theme that we had to go for.
So when I asked you, Ito-san, before, when you were creating your piece, you have been mentioning there were 3 issues that you would like to draw. Those were about Kirito, the main person. You wanted to make him look good, and you wanted to work on VR. And Kirito and Asuna, they should be in love affairs. So I thought you were mentioning about those 3 points. And for your movie, all of these had some walls, so the VR changing into AR. Kirito, it starts with a body with not having special talent. So how did you bring that back into your story? Well, for these 3 issues that I wanted to put into my movie as a topic, in the ordinary scale, first of all, we just changed it into VR from VR to AR. And for a time being, I just worked on the AR and the main leading role, the Kirito. First of all, on the very first half, he was not able to stand up so clear. Therefore, Asuna has been the focal point. Therefore, I thought that the movie would look good if we had 2 leading main roles using Asuna. And at that time, smartphone games started to establish. Therefore, the Kirito, those people who wanted to play the PS5, the core gamer, worked on Kirito. And then for Asuna was for the light players, for the smartphone players. So I thought that we could create a zoning for some conflictious game. So the leading main role, Kirito, gradually he became stronger to become looking like a protagonist. At that time, the smartphone game started, and the Ingress started in 2013, like the location game and Pokemon game released in 2015. And so the ordinary scale, just before the ordinary scale, a new way of game using cities and towns started up. So does that impacted your way of movie? When Pokemon Go was becoming familiar and popular, when creating our movie, we were just questioning whether this is really going to come into reality or not. And just before our eyes, we started seeing that they are taking root. Therefore, we were very lucky in creating our movies. So the large-scale event was happening in Roppongi Hills. However, it was not that catchy at that time. Pokemon was rather much more stronger or supported. So having Tokyo as a background, was it good or was it fun using Tokyo as a background? Oh, Tokyo is a place where you can hunt the location very easily, so my feeling was at ease. So when people went out, they just went out for 2 hours and they took good pictures of Tokyo. If we were working in a local area more apart from Tokyo, we might have much more struggled. For the X, you've been mentioning that Tokyo was a place that is destroyable, but ordinary scale, you considered Tokyo and searched a place, a playful place in Tokyo. So where was it? First of all, it was UDX building of Akihabara. Kawahara-san, the author, had a strong preference for the UDX building. And Kadokawa also has been pushing UDX for using for the background. And we had to have space where several dozens of people came in and have to fight. And we needed an area where we can come back to the square. So legal-wise, there could be several issues, but then we had every issues. But we thought that landscape was very good too. And the accent terminal was very good too. So during your work, AR has been rewritten, and maybe you start giving out a fantasy space like using castles. So how did you come to this plot? We worked on AR, so the information is rewritten. So the construction or architect that's already there, which is visible, and we can just rewrite it into a tangible thing in order to make things look better. So rather than having put in some constructions on nothing, we thought that it was better to change from a visual to another visual. So how was the image board working? Hori-san, who has been working from the initial, we have been ordering him to create the drawing board. Did you have anything that you really wanted to have, like co-act or funness, playfulness, or taste? Ko-aku. Sorry, scary. So, irrelative of how scary the story would be, or the role of the player would be, I just wanted to make it scary, but I did not say so much about scariness. So it was just about how scary the space would be in order to play around. Yes. So in reality, so using Tokyo, and Tokyo is a real place, so using that as a background, did you think it was a good thing? I've been living here for 20 more years, and for me, Tokyo's scape site or landscape is very familiar to me. However, when people observe this landscape from people living in the rural area or the overseas people, I wanted people to observe Tokyo, to feel the funness. I want them to play around. So just like X, let's say the Asagaya Station, where anime often uses that Asagaya Station, but then I thought I wanted to use something more famous as a building or a structure so that everybody will understand. And that worked well on the movie. Professor Ueno, so I think you've been observing the ordinal scale. How did you feel? Yes, I saw, and the gap between AR and VR was very interesting for me. I wasn't very fond of AR. I thought it was just like an advertisement. And VR, well, maybe I'm too old to say, but there's a dream of subculture and counterculture. Moving images are connected together. So it's not about selling things or else making the visuals better. Those are the factors that I can't stand for AR. However, in terms of the hidden layers within the AR, Tokyo has been a built or a scrap and build history, meaning that Tokyo doesn't have much history. It was always scrapped and built. So the other day I've been observing Bohemian Rhapsody and the London in the 70s or UK in the 70s. You just change the vehicle and then run it in the city. Then you get the 70s UK. However, in Japan, the landscape is changing so drastically because of scrap and build condition. The city itself does not have the memory, or the city has been going through all the history which was intercessant. I mean, it was not always connected. So, about the memory, the Tokyo and anime, when I just think of this, I was just thinking that AR could be giving some memory, the connection of the memory of Tokyo and the place. So, what you have been saying is that you have been deprived of. So you say that AR is going to be rewriting, redrawing the memory, but that is done by the AR that you dislike, and that's a cynical issue, don't you think? Well, for instance, in Nihonbashi, there's an expressway in Tokyo. And let's say how much prosperous or how much beautiful that area was in the era of Edo era, because there's a bridge, there's water running by, and then upon that, there's Highway Express. And the Soviet Talkovsky, the director, the Solaris, he has been saying about the futuristic Tokyo. And with this expressway makes the city look like a future city. So it's a live action, and thinking about the imaginary of the AR, the Tokyo, the sci-fi potential of the Tokyo seems to be degenerated. But maybe if we come to think of this, in Edo period, maybe this city in Tokyo has been very beautiful, like Venice with water, Venezia with water. But then it was bombed, air raided, and then it was destroyed, and then it was built again. Once again, we come to the 80s, and making a comparison was very, very interesting.
Now, we talked about Nihonbashi, and you were mentioning that it can be a city that is destroyed, but Patrova too. Now, Oshi's had also a theme, but in Nihonbashi, it was not going to destroy the expressway, but they were going to destroy the old bridge. Now, what do you feel about this, Mr. Ueno? I think that you can interpret it in different ways. Well, you think he wanted to destroy Tokyo, and there is this desire from him, and I also have that desire too. But when you're losing memory, if Tokyo is losing memory, and Tokyo has its life, and it's not like destroying that, but it's more of trying to forget the past and trying to go further on and trying to find profit too. You don't really have that kind of city in other countries. All the major cities, they have their history and they have their memories, but in Tokyo we don't have that, and I think that's what irritates him, and I think that's why he is attracted that way. Well, for Petrova series in OVA, there was this one terrorism, and the second time in the with the computer, there's cyber terrorism, and the third, the destruction is very small, but you create this war. So with Petrova series, three destructions. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Ito here. Now, you mentioned that you're able to destroy, but also when we have the monsters, then we do have Tokyo destroyed. But do you feel that Tokyo is worth destroying? Do you think so? Yes, I think so. And you mentioned from Mr. Ueno that the buildings from the past are left in other cities, whilst in Japan, in Tokyo, it is not, because we have natural disasters, and I think we have the idea that everything is going to be destroyed. And we have, I think there is this mindset that's saying that there are people, this is going to be destroyed from other people, so we would like to destroy it with our hands. I think there's a lot of people thinking in that way in the movie sector. Now, if we look at the TV series, also we do have the terrorism in the Tokyo Metropolitan building is also destroyed. And as you mentioned, if someone is going to destroy that, I think there is this feeling that everyone would like to destroy it on their own effectively in the movie. Now, Mr. Ito, you have been working, living in more than 20 years now. What kind of images do you have? Well, there's a lot of people. It's heavily populated. Before coming up to Tokyo, I thought it was a scary area, and I thought I wanted not to be deceived, and I tried to avoid being sold wrong telephone cards, but I didn't have that kind of acquaintance. But I think that we had that kind of ideas. But if you look at Kabuki City, and it has become cleaner, and it's easier for us also to enter now. But on the other hand, you can see that the enjoyable parts are also missing too. And I'm not quite sure if this is good or bad. I'm not quite sure about that. Well, if you look at Megazone 2-3, that was released in 1985. And at that time, we had the new FO, and the Tokyo was changed. And so in Megazone 2-3, that was within the sceneries that was just in. You can see the love hotels, the rotating beds were also disappearing too. And the public safety was also left there. And I think the animation, you can keep memories too. Now, what do you feel about Megazone? Well, Megazone 2-3 is something that I really enjoyed. But the memories being rewritten now, the city is going to be destroyed and it connects with a scrap and build. But when you forget about the memories, then you look at the reality and you think about your recognitions and sceneries and sense that you feel. Now that is there, but it is for the AR. It's in the interface. And the interface's entrance is virtual. And I think it connects to right now. And we had the issues also having the idols wearing armed uniforms, and that was an issue. And I was thinking that this is really going to happen too. I really liked that scene. And if you think of Matrix, compared to that, I think that they were more progressed. The reality of the Japanese society was wasn't there. So it was there, looking at the idols and enjoying that in the 1985. But also, it is the armed society, and it is really an enclosed society. And I really like that, although it is a city in space. And Marclos and Sidonian, everything. It is after Macros, but that's the reason I like it. Well, we talked about idols, but if you think about the subculture implemented a policy, a public policy. Now, that was politics. That was also implemented too. But I think the animation writers were not thinking about that. But they also had the background of that too, and I think that was also impressive too. Well, it is an international festival. I would like to mention that, as you said, in the propaganda movies, the animations of Japan had a really high technology, and also it has its technique of drawing that, expressing that. And it is also the Moderator, the Peach Boy, and those was also used as a propaganda. And I think that kind of trend is sometimes still continuing these days too. And because of that, you can get away from the reality, and also it is changed. And that is new and old animation, East animation. And so I think that's the attractiveness that I cannot give up watching it. Now, we talked about Momotaro, Umi no Shinpei, the Beach Boy, the Shinpei. Now, they were celebrating the nature in Japan. It talks about this origins city, and that is compared to the area that has been covered. But if you think about Mount Fuji, that's the symbolic scenery of Japan. But I think mainly we focus on cities mainly. Even if you say Kyoto, there's the temples and the cities together. That becomes the iconic city. I feel that it is away from nature. What do you feel about that? Well, as mentioned before, this destroy by animation and the forgetting and also rewriting of the reality through animation. If you look at the reality, I think it would be gentrification. And it is like Mr. Trump did. You get rid of the areas that aren't affordable and they create a huge building there. And where there's gentleness, then it is rewritten and also you forget and you look about the memories. Now, if you look at the war, you conquer an area, you get something from yourself, and there are some countries that they say that this area is their own country, but I feel that it is destroying and rewriting the memory. Now, war is something that you go for genderfulness. Now, I think looking at these directors, when you think about the locations, the areas is where you can have the gentrification, and you don't have to think about who people were there, what kind of people living were there. That kind of memories were also disappearing too. So that kind of information control is also happening in animation, and that is happening from VR to AR, and I think that was another interesting point. So when you think about redevelopment, we have the memory, and in the original scale, then we have the AR, and the filter is also another filter is added too.
So let me ask Ito-san, so ordinal scale was the normal scale, and then you went to Sun Limited, which was mainly on Tokyo, and Hello World movie was staged on Kyoto. So for instance, for Balance Unmissable, Balance Unmissable is probably different from the movie, but how about the balance of using the stage, the background? And the cities, is it different from movies versus TV programs? Well, the working place is the police pad. So I wanted to create a image where everybody can image easily. You can just create a gaudy area, but rather than that, I thought I would like to have a visual that makes people understand a bit more better. So that was about TV program, yes. And for Hello World, that was using Kyoto, and 3D CG was employed. So including that, how was Kyoto as a background of animation? Well, Kyoto doesn't have a very high rise, therefore it's not worth destroying the city. Therefore, a Kyoto Tower could be destroyed, but other ones were saved. So the climax of the movie was maybe the destroyer destroy the tower. But Kyoto is created like a chess game board, so in that case, structure-wise, it is fitting for the CGs. And the climax, the city slides, and the roads keep changing. That was a development. Yes. Such a structural city, personally, I don't like it because it's difficult for me to understand or memorize the roads. I wanted some cities which was much more dirty, meaning that it would be much more familiar and understandable, memorable to me. So you said that for Tokyo, you said Tokyo was very near to you, familiar to you, so it was very useful. But for Kyoto, how did you come to an area that you would like to use? Did you have some special pinpointing? At the case when we were creating the scenario, we've been already plotting the scenery. And then, other than that, we rented bicycles and we bicycled around the city. So you took a lot of pictures by digital cameras? No. So yes, we were taking pictures of the residential areas, of the roads, somewhere along the way, and not taking any places of pictures, which was great locations. And we wanted to take pictures so that the residents would not think queer of us. So you were so it's just that not depicting from the atmosphere. You just wanted to create something more in details within the line. And then modeling on the local area, you are to put it back into the sceneries by having a pilgrimage along the way where people thought very sacred. When I entered this industry, the background of the anime started changing like that, and that already became a standard. So just right before I entered, the number 2 of anime number 2, Mamoru Hosoda, he was mentioning about Hikarigaoka, taking a lot of pictures for Hikarigaoka area, and that made me aware that anime was created with a real background, photographs used in the pictures. So I already have that mindset, therefore. Yes, I thought using that pictures were all right, but for me, I thought I could use a more vague kind of a picture as well. And ultimately, if there's a people, if they can really draw in details about the atmosphere and the background, maybe it could be a very photographic picture. However, there was not much people who can draw in that detail. Therefore, that was why the photograph was used. And I think there's a limit to writing with a lot of density for the background. So someday there's going to be some regression. And looking at several works, the artwork's background, making it unique, could make some directions for a work. So is it a trend that you are mindful about? I think everybody is thinking about the same thing. So the real background, I think everybody is seeing some limit to it, therefore. People are starting to change the colors and the hues, or maybe change the way they handle the information. People are trying to search for any kind of way to create new backgrounds, I suppose. Sort out online the artwork. So you have been starting from the VR picture in the background. You started out like that, and then the TV series started to employ different ways. So were you thinking about what is the real tone of that worldview that you're creating? Within the TV series, it used to be that the game was very fun, therefore the reality was more bored or boredom area. Therefore, I tried to create the reality more looking bored. But nowadays, the gap between the two is becoming smaller. It's about the color. Yes, it's about the color and the additional of the contrast color. By using those factors, I try to control the information. So the Tokyo icon, around 2020s, the national stadium boom has been happening. So in animation works, there were several buildings such as the looking like the national stadium. And regarding OrdinalScale, it's a futuristic film. Did you think that you had to have that stadium? Yes, the setting was that we didn't know the format because the architect was changing, but at that time I loved Zahan. So I just wanted to include that Zahan just as it is, but then there were some hindrances that I couldn't do so. So I love Zaha, the architect, but I couldn't do that because of some factors. Even if it's an anime, if I use the Zaha's planning of the architect, I am going to be incurring some costs. So I wasn't able to pay that cost. So I wasn't able to use that within my film. So I have been hearing in the past that even if you are using some specific architect or the building, there are some people who want you not to create or make this visual of the architect as it is going to be some infringement of the patents. So it's sort of like a sci-fi design that you would like to employ or you have to use. Yes, so you're going to be talking about that with your staffs, how you're going to be reflecting those buildings within your backgrounds. Yes, so at that time, the information of what we're going to be actually ultimately drawing was not complete. But I think there were some orders, and I just remembered about Zaha, the Blade Runner, the Ellery Scott or Shiro Mito, if they did not handle the Asiatic Los Angeles, let's say when foreign people come over to Tokyo, and if we take them to Shinjuku, Akihabara, what happened? So within the 20 years, 30 years, I've been taking all these overseas friends over to the Tokyo area, and every friends were saying, oh, this is Blade Runner. So if they have not created that SF-like movie, what really happened? So Ridley Scott production, through his production, I think through his film, we were able to rediscover the new Tokyo. And so the image of the anime, I think Blade Runner was produced in 1982. And so we are in deficit. I mean, we are lending very much from Blade Runner. So, Mr. Ito, when you're creating some futuristic city, do you think the Blade Runner means a lot to you? So is it a plus to you or is it a negative to you? It's a negative for me, really. So I try not to come near to the Blade Runner worldview. Sid Mead is no longer here, and I really feel that. And looking at the Japanese,
well, you can see that there's a lot of digital signers in Tokyo, and there's a lot of videos, especially in Shibuya crossings. It is redeveloped, and you can see that there's more monitorings too. And the reality has become close to Blade Runner. Now, then, it is difficult to think of the future, right? Well, I think without PRs, that's the best option. But I think it's that you can good to see something that you like. I don't want to be forced to what to see. Well, I can't see Nico Nico, and I'm not good AR as an old person. If this is not a PR, but if there's a layer just jumping in, if the immigrants are just walking there, but if you put in the AR, then you can see the city is changing in a different way, then I feel that AR would be interesting too. And also, I think there would be a possibility for using AR in animation. But I think so. I think cities have these kind of dark areas too, and animations have used this as a resource. Now, it's like Columbus and an egg. There's cyber and also digital, and there's cyborg and Egypt, China. If you kind of put all of that together, Ridley Scott did those kind of things. And the creators and consumers, how can we open up? There is this barrier, as the director said, if there is a Blade Runner, it's going to be a huge barrier. Now, there is this queue opening the city. Now, you can feel that there is this dark area for the city. Well, when you're traveling and when you look in guidebooks, there are areas that are dangerous, but that's the most interesting part of the city, right? And so I think Tokyo is trying to clean up those areas. They're destroying those areas. And so we're trying to forget about the memories and also the histories. But we have to still keep that there is this dark area in a city, and I think this should be one channel too. Well, listening to your story, I feel that it's not an AR for cleansing, or it's more of AR to show. And it's not covering up. So AR should be something that you should show, is what you're mentioning. Well, when you talk about Tokyo scenery, then when you think about animation in Tokyo in animation, I think there's not one things that are there's the Palco in Shibuya doesn't come up. Well, Ikebukuro has a lot of animation shops, and there's a lot of women fan, and therefore Seibu comes out as an Ikebukuro station scenery. But if you look at 1980s, Saison culture does not come out as an animation. I thought that was interesting. I thought it was an icon. Well, the Megazone, as a Megazone covered Shibuya. Did it? Yes, it did. Well, it went to Omotesando, and also it covered areas around the station. And Kichijoji City too. And also for Game Daisen, they had the living areas for Kichijoji. And I think it was VR, but I think they had also the oceans. I'm not quite sure if it's Kamakura, but I think they went on a motorcycle on the ocean. I don't think we had the oceans. I'm not clear about that, but I don't think oceans were there. I think for the Shibuya, they were focusing more on stations. And was that because anime fans were not going there? If you think about Akihabara Station, a lot of areas are covered. But if UDX also covers the area that animation fans go. And I think it is not shooted because anime fans are not joining that area. But also, it does not connect with the real estate shark, but AR is not the generation. You think about how you're going to expand the sense and the ideas. Now, if you think of AR in that way, it's not gentrification only and just cleaning up the dirty areas, but I think it's more of I mentioned before that it is a destruction of memory, but I think it's more of thinking of how can we make the city cool and productive. And so it could be chiage, which would be valuing the area. And I feel that makes more impressive than VR, I guess. Okay, then it's not Tokyo, but also, he was mentioning that Miyazaki Hayao created Totoro. Now, the Totoro had a huge impact, saying the forest of being area for the children. And so it was just an area with woods, but that became a forest for Totoro for the children too. In that sense, I think if you rewrite it as a program to sacred places, then I think you can rewrite the memories, I guess. But in that sense, I think the animation has this power of beautifully showing the area in animation. Now, do you think about that? Yes, I think so. I think we can make it dirty or clean. Now, if we are going to use it, then we will have to make it beautiful, because otherwise we're being scolded, and therefore we do have that intention. Well, is that good because if it's possible because it is an image? Yes, I think so. Because if it's not an individual home, you don't really need any permissions, and I think that is different from real and live actions. Because in Tokyo is famous for not an area that live actions is not accepted, but if that is pictorialized, then it is possible, and I think this is the strength of animation. Well, Mr. Ito, when you think about Tokyo scenery, and in the Balance Unlimited, then you see that there is this area, there was this reaction that of there was this scenery of Tokyo. Now, looking at the scene, I thought they were. See, if you look at the era, then you don't know if it's before or COVID or after COVID. But I wanted to show it as reality, and so I showed it that people would have masks on. So I think you can show that it is the reality. That's how I wanted to show it. Okay, so the freshness of this movie is important. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Because implementing that as an animation is quite difficult. But just before ending, if you write a picture, then I thought I could implement that kind of timing. And so I think that was really a special experience for me. Well, when I was looking at the movie, then I thought that at the end, I felt you added on that scene. Yes, that's right, because I drew it. And so if you don't have that intention, you don't have to do that. And if you think that you have to do it now, otherwise you wouldn't do it. And so that was impressive for me. Well, when they're writing the comics, you think about whether we're going to have masks on or not. And you don't really know the answer for it, if we should or not. And we had this kind of discussions. But Mr. Ito, I think you're not able to see the mouth working, and also sometimes it's difficult to show the expression, and I think it's unrealistic. But you feel that you have to implement the reality and react to the reality right now in the animation too. Yes, I think it is difficult, and the timing is important too. But I think if we can do that, then I think it is both. I would like to go for it. If it's Dragon Ball, then it's quite difficult. But if there is a reality that shows the reality, you can show and differentiate the past or the present. And if there is a hint there, I think we should implement that too.
So, Mr. Ueno, I would like to ask you, so you were mentioning about being further within the future compared to the reality is what you have been saying when you were filming. So, in terms of animation, are there any area where it is quite different from the reality and the animation? So maybe it could be the case that you were trying to bring in the reality, but then because it is a picture or a visual, maybe it could be slightly bringing in something different. You might be bringing in some interpretation because it is an animation. So what about this? Yes, that's a difficult question. Director has been mentioning about the facial masks wearing or not, and will that be depicted within our animations in the future or not? In reality, we're wearing facial masks, but then when I'm speaking, we're taking this off. We're not quite sure if these facial masks are really contributing to us not getting infected or not. The scientific evidence is already swaying at this point of time. So maybe, well, these are viruses, not human beings. People are saying that they are having some life. However, it may not be some substance of life. And human sceneries are always what animation has been drawing. However, the virus is difficult to depict because the scale is different. If we change the scale, maybe we can try drawing. So non-human coming out and making feature and animation was always something that has been present. However, the character changing scales, or when we change the scale of the characters, what or how does Tokyo become to look like? Maybe that's not something that could be accepted, but those people who are interested in technical issues like AR, maybe they might go into quantum physics and quantum computers or quantum dynamics. People are already interested in those areas. Therefore, in such an age, what kind of a new non-reality that the animation can speak of? So let's say when we change the scale, and then how does Tokyo start looking like? And when we change the scale of a human body, then what happens? There's already a manga cartoons or animation that we have gigantic people walking around the city that exist. But after following your discussions, I started getting interest about changing scales. So what you're saying is that if you change the scale of the reality, your view might change. Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. So I would like to come back to the film that we're filming this time. And Mr. Ito, you're having several films. But are there any films that you are very impressive of within your product? That's Pato 2. The method, the Pat 2, Pat Labor 2. I think, yes, I'm a great fan of Pat Labor 2. Was that impactful? Yes, looking back, I feel that there's too much word. However, the animator, very famous animator, is creating this animation with earnest. This animator, Kon-san, is now a very famous layouter these days. And it's not about accuracy, but it's like how it makes it real. And that is all about Pat Labor 2. So within Tokyo, city of Tokyo, I think Kon-san was drawing a layout for the Tokyo of an overall Tokyo, not looking very high from the high rise. And Oshi Mamoru has been saying this in the past that if you don't use the view of the city groups well, you don't really make this Tokyo look fascinating. If it's just taken just by a photograph, it doesn't look so exciting. So you have to put in some balance to make it look exciting, look like Tokyo itself. And you just mentioned that Pat Labor had too much phrases, but for Tokyo drawn, what is impressive about Pat Labor 2 for Tokyo depiction? So the scenery of Tokyo. There's a scene that people will be shot by helicopter, and I think the Kinokuniya bookstore was also impressive. Yellow gas is dispersed around Kinokuniya bookstore, and now the bookstore has a different floor. The first floor has been remade and rechanged. But is that the scenery that you well know? Yes. So it just comes like it's a norm. And every day or every time I go past this Kinokuniya bookstore, it just comes in my mind that, oh, that's a bookstore in Pat Labor 2. And the wall used to be yellow. Mr. Ueno, I think you have a different impression. But Pat Labor 2 itself is very impressive for you too? Yes, so I just mentioned about Mega Zone 2, 3, so I'll mention about Pat Labor 2. And I've been making an interview to Mr. Oshii regarding the layout issue. the story and the scenario, I was asking him what the meaning of number 3 is. So if there should be any meaning to number 3, is a notation to rise some sort of thinking to people who are the audiences. So Oshii-san was saying that that was how he was creating the layout and the storyboard. Listening to him, I understand how he was creating these stories. So it's not about making the production from the interpretation, try to nudge people to interpret, but structure-wise, I think he was making his work, and I think I have learned a lot from him. The love and hate of Tokyo is what I got from him too. I think Oshii did not love Tokyo much. He is now depicting Omori, which was a very dusty, dirty, murky place. And he doesn't love the gentrified Tokyo at all. So after destroyed Tokyo, in ashes, Tokyo is going to rise up again from ashes. So that's one idea. And in the case of Pat Labor 2, Tokyo was to be recreated into Mekong Delta. So within his mind, I think it was about the Vietnam War. So it's not just about the destruction impetus in the 60s, the shade and light. So I just mentioned about love and hate. I think the producer had that notion, love and hate, to Tokyo. And that is all about rewriting the memory, or maybe overriding the Tokyo as a memory. And that is well shown in Pat Labor too. It's not about defense or arms forces. In that terms, it's very interesting because everybody writes about it. However, it's more about how to get along with love and hate that everybody has, and Akira and Megazone 2-3 could be comparable too. So what the director worked on, the Tokyo landmark, and one idol, a girl, has been creating a society, and with that community, the time seems to be a little bit starting to get different. And then, little by little, the society in the Tokyo itself is rewritten. That was interesting. Following you, I come from a rural area of Japan. So for me, the love for Tokyo is not that much. So for me, Tokyo is rather Tokyo when I observe from the animation side. And Mr. Ito also came from a rural area thinking that Tokyo is rather a scary place. But after residing in Tokyo, you accepted Tokyo, so you don't have that love and hate. For me, I have a stronger sense that I live in a place where animation is created.
So, unlike Oshii-san, you don't have the feeling that you want to destroy, and in Pat Labor too, it's not showing that, right? No, I don't have that kind of passion. Absolutely not. And so, I have to shoot the memorial buildings. And so I do this because this destroying because it's a movie, but I don't have that kind of desire. So I'm not quite sure if it's a personal or if it's a generation desire or not, but I think we're not in that generation, as Oshii said. Well, as Mr. Ueno mentioned, you said that Tokyo is an area that the Memorize is going to be renewed. Now, how do you feel about it? Is it Tokyo an area that you have to replace the memories and rewrite that? Well, I actually feel that. And I think if you look at the audio and if you're creating a production, then you find out that the building is not there anymore. And I feel that actually I'm experiencing this kind of rewriting of my experience, and this is what I'm always feeling every day. So you can see that Tokyo doesn't have a building that is 100 years old. And I think that we have to live with that situation. But at the same time, I feel disappointed with that too. Well, I think thinking about this scrap and build, we have to stop this. And also, we have to think about a building that is going to last for 100 years. Now, and I think that should be coming to city planning and also architecture. Well, the reason why we're circulating this to scratch and build is because you can make a lot of money circulating. But I think it's more important to have this building. And that is more important for animation and also for the society too. But everyone is looking at this profit, and it's not just scrapped and built. But it's not. But I think not quite sure in the animation, but in the areas where you teach at university, also when you write something, in that area, it is the scrapped and built. That is really happening, and they're looking for profit in that area. But although it's not a huge profit, now I think this is something of an issue of a gender or ideology. We have to think about why are we going to leave how are we going to leave the culture. So you think that it is the structure of a society, and that's the issue? Yes, I think so. Then, Mr. Ito, now if you are want to use a location in Tokyo originally, then is there any area that you would like to shoot, especially? Well, I think I will naturally think of somewhere that's close to my home. Is that because you know about it a lot? Well, what comes up to mind is the areas and places that I often visit, because my brain is limited and imagination is also limited too. But the National Stadium, as Mr. Ueno mentioned, I'm not quite sure how long it's going to last, and that's a worry for me. Now, because if you look around the National Stadium, it's fun, and there is this good areas which is culturally interesting, and I think everything starts from there. Now, when you have this main shooting and also the areas that you were not able to use as the location, I think if you can focus on the areas around that as a director, and I think that is going to be the resource for your strategy. Well, I don't want to mention that too much because I don't want to share the fun part of the National Stadium. But if you look into it, there are many exciting places too. Well, in 2022, we had the apartment films a lot. And so it has already been produced, so I can follow that. Well, is there a reason that the apartment is really fascinating for you? Because I was living in an apartment, so that was interesting, and that's why I saw it. And, the same people are thinking, right? And so it's not interesting. Well, I've only lived in also apartments and also in apartments only. And I haven't lived in areas with gardens. Now, it's 100 years after Showa started, and so I think there is this saying that Ryusuke Hikaru is also mentioning that the when 100 years past Meiji, then the post-war things were renewed. And so there is this idea from Hikawa-san saying that after 100 years of the start of Showa, then it is going to be era is going to be also renewed too. Now, the apartment that is saying goodbye to the apartment of Showa symbols is going to be also passed away. Do you think so too? With the apartments, you feel that the nostalgia for that? Yes, I think so. Well, I looked on Google Maps and I checked the areas where I lived, and it was still there. And when I looked for my grandma and grandparents' house, then it wasn't there, and it was scrapped and built actually. But I could see my post-living areas. Well, there is this artificial areas. There's nature around, and there's greenery around, but it's not the nature from the past. But you have this garden for the apartment, and that area is nostalgic too. But that is different from the city in the space and shuttle, and also it is different from. It is same as the different gardens, and so if you look at the city of Tokyo is on the turtle, and you have the town from away from the earth. Now, there in Japan, there was a French philosopher saying that Japan is a satellite around the world, and Oshi's thought about that, and he thought that it is an artificial place too. And so he thought it was also a spaceship. And I think in that sense it is a spaceship. So it is a box garden, right? And so there's this box garden, and that is going to be also written too. Well, I'm not quite sure of what people think. But if you look and walk around the living areas, you think about how many people are all living here. Then when you think about Tokyo, when you're going to create animations in Tokyo, then that is going to be important for you. Is that right? Yes. Well, we don't really have good news around these days, but do you think that would be also impacting your plans? Yes, I think so. That's why we don't want to have a very sad story. We want to focus on happy stories. And I think that's the trend. And so if the prerequisite or precondition is like richness, then you would like to go for that. I think that would happen too. And so in that situation, the Attack on Titan, those kind of movies would not happen. That's the situation in this kind of environment. Okay, we're running out of time right now, and I think we covered a lot of themes. Now I would like to wrap up, and Mr. Ueno, would you like to give us some words? Well, wrap up. When you think about animation in Tokyo, what do you think the future would be? Well, I think. And the yen is depreciating right now, and we have this kind of environment and the dirty bombs, and also there is a possibility for strategic atomic zones coming out, and I think we are in the situation which is catastrophic and also SF. Now, I think we have to have happy endings in the business areas, but if you look at the reality in Tokyo, I feel it is going to become more interesting. And so there are scary things, but for the Israelis and Iran people happy, I feel that everyone was happy too. I've never thought of 1980s was really a good time.
Rather than that, I thought at one point in 1990s, it was a danger time where a lot of foreign people that was roaming around Tokyo, Yokohama, a little bit dangerous people. I sort of love that danger, or else maybe the Arab ladies wearing their hijabs walking around Tokyo these days. I think that would be more exciting. It's so many migrants increasing in Tokyo, and then at one point, in reality, a Blade Runner could actually happen in Tokyo. Or else within our daily lives, there could be some actions too, which will draw out some differences, and how much we creators or the audiences will be opening up their eyes will be probably the positive possibilities bringing down into animations. So I think the time of age is becoming more tragic. However, on the contrary, there could be much more interesting things happening too. Listening to you, maybe there could. The importance is that there could be an instance where this miniature garden like Tokyo is going to sway and try to change itself. That is the instance where we should grasp. Yes. So thank you very much. And what is going to be happening from here on? You say that reality is going to be tragic, and with that condition, maybe planning will be that we might create some fun or much more euphoric works. I think people will turn into the nostalgic works. Right now, the room that I work, next door, Southeast Asian people are working, and every day when I see he or she always greets me, hello, hello. So I try to greet back. However, the neighbor, I don't know if it's a family or not, but the family members are not getting well so much. I hear quarrels, but then to me, they are very friendly. So within my ordinary life, maybe within the discussions that we went through, maybe that could be some kind of a trigger for changes within the animation too. When we talk about Japan, we just think about the average Japan, but then looking at our residents, looking at our daily lives, maybe things are changing, and that could lead to some differences in how you depict the Tokyo. So within the animation industry, yes, maybe we could create much more core original work. Yes, so let's expect for some new plannings. And with that, this was Director Mr. Ito and Professor Ueno. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking part within this program. Yes, it was very fun. Thank you very much.